The rule. No one talks about. Across the galaxy, there was one rule older than any treaty, deeper than any code of war, and stronger than any shield. Never touch a human. No one explained why. It was simply there, written into every contract, taught in every academy, whispered through every corner of the Galactic conquered. Even the most powerful warlords, the deadliest assassins, and the coldest diplomats followed it without question. No contact. Not a handshake, not a pat on the back, not even a brush in a crowded room. It was strange, mysterious, but it worked. Since humans joined the Galactic Alliance, peace had lasted longer than ever before. No wars, no rebellions, no extinction events. Until today. Valor stood tall in the shining crystal halls of Selvaron Prime, his scales catching the soft light of the chamber. He was young for a commander, just 30 rotations, but full of pride. His people, the Varkari, had always been known for their sharp minds and sharper tongues, and Valor was no different. He believed in order, in power, in respect earned through strength, and he hated Ambassador Reed Talon. The human sat across from him at the table, calm as ever. He wore a simple black coat, his face unreadable, his eyes quiet but deep. Too deep. Like they had seen things the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Valor had been arguing for hours. Trade routes, mining rights, patrol zones. Every time he made a demand, the human said the same thing. No. Just that. No reason, no anger, just no. And every time that same look. That silent human look. Cold. Patient. Like watching a child throw a tantrum. Valor's jaw tightened. His claws curled under the table. You do not understand your place, Terran, he hissed. Your people are lucky we even allow you to sit here. The human smiled. Just a little. And yet here you are, still asking. Laughter ran through the human delegates behind Talon. Quiet, but enough. Too much. Valor stood so fast his chair clattered to the floor. The chamber guards turned. The translator drones buzzed nervously. The silence grew heavy. You dare mock me? Valor growled. Talon didn't answer. He only tilted his head. Valor stepped forward. 1 step, 2. Then, he reached out. He placed a clawed hand on Reed Talon's shoulder. It lasted only a second. Just a second. But that second shattered everything. Talon blinked once. Slowly. The other humans froze. One whispered, something in a language the translator didn't catch. Then Talon stood. He looked down at Valor's hand, then back up into the alien's eyes. That was unwise, he said softly. He didn't shout. He didn't move in anger. He simply turned and walked away. Every human followed. They left the chamber, the hall, the station, without a word, without a single backward glance. Valor stood in the middle of the chamber, his heart pounding. He waited for the humans to come back, to file a complaint, to demand punishment. Nothing. That night, the stars above Selvaron shimmered strangely. The moons pulsed with colors no one had seen before. Some called it a trick of the atmosphere. Some said it was nothing, but the oldest among the conquered said nothing at all. They locked their doors, burned old scrolls, and prayed. Valor slept uneasy. His dreams were dark and broken. He saw a face with burning eyes, a voice without sound, a word he could not remember, but feared. The next morning he woke up and something was wrong. He didn't remember yesterday. Not all of it. Parts were missing. The beginning of the meeting. The reason for his anger. Even Talon's face was a blur. He looked into the mirror and saw a line of ash across his collarbone. He tried to brush it off, but it didn't move. It wasn't dust. It was burned into his scales. Across the station, others began to report strange things. Drones repeating the same word. Reminder. Doors that wouldn't open. Time loops in the corridor clocks. Lights flickering in rhythms that matched human brainwaves. The human embassy was gone. Their ship? Missing from the hangar. No departure logs. No engine traces. No goodbye. But something had been left behind. In the middle of the chamber where Talon once sat now rested a black cube. Smooth. Silent. Cold. No one could move it. Not with machines. Not with hands. Not with energy. It hummed. Quietly. Like a pulse. A heartbeat. Or a warning. Only non-humans could hear it. And those who listened too long bled from the eyes. The Concorde sent a message to Earth. No reply. And slowly, across the stars, the oldest law was whispered once more. Never touch a human, but it was too late. The memory collapse, the days that followed felt like walking through mist. Commander Valor stood at the command deck of the Selvaron Prime Embassy Station, staring out into the stars, but something was wrong. The stars were wrong. He knew the constellations. He'd memorized them as a cadet. But now, they looked like they were bending, as if a curtain had been drawn and pulled too tight. He turned to his aide, but couldn't remember her name. He reached for the station logs, but half the entries were missing. Entire sections of data, just blank. No corruption, no errors, just gone. Like someone had erased moments from reality itself. Commander, a technician, whispered behind him. We have a situation in the research wing. He followed without speaking. The corridors stretched longer than they should have. The lights flickered overhead, stuttering in soft patterns, almost like breathing. He didn't like it. No one liked it. But no one dared say it out loud. Because deep down, everyone felt the same thing, that something had begun to watch them from behind their own eyes. In the research wing, a team of Varkari scientists stood frozen. They stared at the black cube. It had been moved, or rather, it had moved itself. It now sat on the ceiling, upside down, defying gravity. There were no marks, no sound, no sign of movement. Just there one moment, and there the next. One researcher, named Silo, had been brave or foolish enough to scan it again. She used high-frequency neutrino waves. That's when she screamed. Valor watched the replay from the security feed. The moment the scanner activated, Selo fell to the floor, clutching her head. She shouted things that didn't make sense, words in no known language. Her eyes rolled back. Her veins turned black. By the time the medics reached her, she had carved 3 words into her own arm. They were warning us. Valor stared at the screen. He didn't feel fear. Not yet. What he felt was worse. Doubt. He didn't remember Salo ever joining the team. But there she was. And when he looked at the team photo from last cycle, she was standing right beside him. Except, in the original file, she wasn't. He pulled up image after image. Sometimes she was there. Sometimes she wasn't. Her face changed. Her uniform changed. Even her name tags were different. Reality was breaking, and it wasn't just the station. Reports came in from other outposts. Ships losing track of time. Pilots forgetting how to land. Navigation systems recalculating coordinates to lead directly to Earth without being told. One freighter claimed to have flown through the sun and survived. Another sent a message describing Earth as not a planet, but a veil. But the most terrifying report came from the moons of Kareth 9. An alien archaeologist uncovered a buried human artifact, dated centuries before humanity's official entry into the galactic community. It was a coin. Old, rusted, simple. But on one side, it bore the words, "Do not forget what they are." That message should not have existed. Humans hadn't even invented faster-than-light travel back then, unless they hadn't needed to. Back on Selvaron Prime, the station's AI began malfunctioning. It started repeating one word over and over again, in every language it had access to. Reminder. It whispered through the speakers, appeared on the screens, even printed itself onto food. Trays in the cafeteria. The AI was reset 3 times. The core was replaced. It didn't stop. If anything, the word got louder, and then the dreams began. First the guards, then the crew, then Valor himself. He saw Reed Talon in his sleep, standing in fields of ash, smiling softly. Behind him, a door, massive, metal, and covered in locks, but one lock was cracked, and something behind it was breathing. Valor woke up screaming. His claws were bleeding. His skin was scorched in patterns that didn't match any known symbol, yet they looked human. When he tried to speak to the Galactic Concord, they brushed him off. Humans are unpredictable, they said. Do not escalate. We will send diplomats. But no diplomats arrived. Instead, something else did. A signal, not from Earth, but from beneath it. A deep, slow pulse. Like a sonar ping from the core of a dying star. It echoed across systems. Planets with no human contact heard it. Alien empaths wept uncontrollably. Starships veered off course as if guided by invisible hands, and in the darkness of the void, on abandoned satellites, on derelict moons, one symbol began to appear. A hand, reaching out, followed by a warning, etched in ancient galactic script. You touched the lock. The first domino falls, the galaxy blinked, and something changed. It wasn't a war. There were no invasions, no battles, no fleets crossing the stars with weapons primed. But things were unraveling, quietly, suddenly, without a trace of who or what was behind it. Entire empires began losing pieces of themselves like sand slipping between their fingers. It started small, on the outer colonies of the Varkari Empire. Power grids shut down without warning. Gravity fields flickered, then collapsed entirely. Farming satellites began growing plants that didn't exist in their databanks, plants that whispered at night. Commander Valor stood at the heart of the Concord's War Council chambers, his posture stiff, his voice shaking, not from fear, but from something worse, confusion. His memories were unstable. He would begin a sentence only to stop, realizing halfway through that he no longer remembered why he had started. The council barely acknowledged him now. He had touched the human. That much they remembered. But some claimed it never happened. Others said it was someone else entirely. Even the recordings disagreed. In some versions, he lunged. In others, he never stood up at all. One showed Reed Talon touching him, and yet the consequences were the same. From the crystalline towers of the Sarathi clans to the data worlds of the Yule Nexus, something was erasing facts. Textbooks rewritten mid-sentence, star charts shifting under observation, whole cities that once bustled with life, now overgrown ruins as if abandoned for centuries, though the residents insisted they'd never left. On the planet Norak Vin, a Varkari research team uncovered a bunker from a long-extinct species. Inside it was a wall carved with symbols that resembled human DNA. But it was dated over 100,000 years ago, before Earth even had electricity. The Conquered was terrified, but not of humans. No, it was something behind them. Or inside them. They reached out to Earth. Again. This time using ancient quantum messaging systems, ones reserved for only the gravest threats. But Earth sent no reply. Not a threat, not a warning, not even a delay code. Just silence. Until the cube moved again. The black cube, now stored in a magnetic isolation vault on Selveron Prime, began to pulse. Not light, not heat. Something else. It emitted a signal that had no measurable frequency, but it spread, organically, like it chose where to go. Machines that got too close began to dream. One drone recited a lullaby from ancient Earth. Another described a city of glass that floated between timelines. A third simply shut down with a final message. We see you now. Aboard one of the last functioning observation posts near the Vale Nebula, an old star watcher named Pivex received a distress ping from the neighboring moon station. He took his ship and flew across. When he arrived, he found no wreckage, no damage, nothing at all. Just a crater, a perfect, smooth crater. Inside it, the same black cube. But this one was open, and it was humming a nursery rhyme in a child's voice, a child who sounded very, very human. By the time Pivex returned to file his report, he had no eyes, not burned, not removed, simply gone. And yet, he saw everything. I saw the door, he told the medics, and behind it, they were waiting. When asked who, he simply whispered, "The ones we forgot." Back in the conquered chamber, a high-ranking diplomat, a member of the centuries-old Zentari High Mind, collapsed mid-meeting. His last words were broadcast across all open channels in the room. "The Terrans are not what you think. They do not conquer with fire. They erase what should not have been. We broke the seal." Then he disintegrated, not exploded, not melted, just unmade, reduced to quantum dust. No species had ever seen it happen before. It was silent, clean, and horrifying. That same moment, across the galaxy, hundreds of human artifacts, museums, relics, even artwork, began to burn or vanish completely. One painting, a simple image of Earth's moon, was seen on 20 different worlds, each one painted with a different phase of the moon, all on the same day. One conquered scientist cracked the pattern and realized the moons formed a countdown. 7 days. That was the final number. 7 days until... what? No one knew. But when they traced the countdown center, it pointed not to Earth, but to a tiny forgotten star system that had been quarantined millennia ago. It wasn't on any map. Its planets had no names, just numbers. But buried deep in the archives, someone found a label, System 0, and beside it, scratched in by hand in a report written in Terran English. "This is where we put it when we swore never to let it out again." Unseen retribution, they had always suspected that humanity was hiding something. The galaxy's most advanced species, the Thalzor, with their planet-sized neural networks, the Kyrex who folded gravity like cloth, and the Cerithians whose living archives sang memories from eons past, had all agreed to the rule, never touch a human. But none of them remembered who first made the rule. Not exactly. There were stories, fragments, pieces of treaties older than written language. Some of the Cerithian song memories spoke of a day when Earth had no sky. Others whispered of a time when humans lived in darkness not because they lacked light, but because they were light's jailers. Now the fragments were reawakening. It began on Thalzor Prime, when the crystal choir went silent. These were not singers. They were time-linked elders who spoke through harmonic resonance, storing the totality of history within their minds, and then, one by one, they began to forget. Not just dates or names, but languages, worlds, entire civilizations. An elder wept, clawing at her crystalline skin, begging her own name to return. Another simply screamed the word, "Return." Elsewhere, the Kyrex, proud and logical, tried to contain what was happening with force. They launched probes into System 0. 20 went in. None returned. Not even debris. Just echoes. Soft, human echoes, played back in the voices of loved ones the Kyrex had never met. The Cerithians reacted differently. They remembered something the others didn't. Not just fear, but shame. Ancient shame. In the deepest chambers of their memory vaults, they unlocked a sealed chamber of truths, one so dangerous that even speaking its name had been forbidden for millennia. Inside was a message. Not written, not spoken, but felt. The truth hit like a flood. Humans were not children of the galaxy. They were not evolved. They were placed, engineered, not by gods, not by machines, but by a coalition of elder races, now long extinct, races that had once faced a threat so great, so uncontrollable, that all they could do was seal it in flesh and bone. That threat was not a creature, not a weapon. It was a frequency, a ripple in space-time so devastating that it tore logic apart. It infected memories, reality, and identity. It turned truth into lies and lies into new history. They could not destroy it. So they encoded it into a species, into us, into humans. Earth wasn't just a world, it was a vault, and the law was never about protecting humans from others, it was about protecting others from the thing that slumbers beneath humanity's collective skin. When Valor received the data, transmitted directly into his skull by a Cerithian archivist, he dropped to his knees. His thoughts bled from his ears. Not metaphorically, his actual thoughts, images, memories, secrets. They leaked like liquid from his mind, staining the chamber floor in pools of memory fluid. He saw Reed Talon again, not as a diplomat, but as a warden, standing at the edge of a broken gate, holding it closed with nothing but will. And he remembered the touch. That moment of contact. That instant he broke the rule. He had cracked the gate. He had invited something to wake up. Not just on Earth, but everywhere. Because humanity wasn't the prison, humanity was the key, and the galaxy had just turned it. That same day, across dozens of systems, the effects began. Stars collapsed without sound. Worlds reversed in orbit, tearing continents apart. Creatures began speaking languages they'd never learned, dead languages from Earth's past, and on the remote outpost of Draxium 3, a single Kyrex engineer opened a sealed maintenance hatch and found a child waiting inside. A human child, alone, smiling, in a place where no human had ever been. The child said one sentence, "Thank you for letting me out," and vanished. Not teleported, not phased, just erased. And with her, the outpost's entire timeline fractured. Half the staff now remembered being born underwater. Others forgot their own names and spoke only in Earth nursery rhymes. Their command AI tried to delete itself. It failed. Then it begged for help. Back on Selveron Prime, Valor tried to warn the Conquered, but they didn't answer, because the Conquered no longer existed. He saw it happen. One moment the council chamber stood glowing, full of voices and anger. The next it was a field of red grass. The buildings gone, the stars different. And the only sound was a soft lullaby humming through the wind, a lullaby in English. The galaxy was not dying. It was being rewritten, and in the new version humans were not visitors. They were the original authors. The star that screamed in every galactic language, there is a word for silence. But what happened to the Ulvaran star was not silence. It was a scream without sound, a cosmic agony so vast that even time seemed to recoil. The Ulvaran star had stood for 1 billion years, burning steady at the heart of Sector Varn. It was called the Anchor of Light, a symbol of stability for nearby worlds. Pilots used it to navigate. Priests prayed to it. Children drew its yellow glow in Star School. And then, one day, it began to scream. Not audibly, not to all. But sensitive minds, telepaths, precogs, dreamweavers, heard it. And they went mad. One by one they collapsed in pools of blood and ink, whispering that the star had seen the truth and could no longer bear its own memory. Within hours, the sun twisted in on itself. Not a supernova, not a black hole. It folded like a dying, thought and disappeared. The gravitational pull vanished. The planets in its orbit spun off into the void, chaotic, lost, directionless. It was the first star in recorded history to commit suicide. And the galaxy began to understand. This wasn't war. This was something far older. Something far worse. It was correction. The Conquered sent their finest minds to trace the timeline. But their data turned to smoke. When they tried to look back just 72 hours, they found contradictions. On one planet, history recorded Reed Talon dying during the Selveron summit. On another, he was never born. And yet, ships received fresh transmissions from him, soft, calm, always the same voice. This was not vengeance. This was release. On Varkari homeworld, the oceans began to freeze from the inside out. The water turned thick, almost crystalline, humming with the voices of forgotten songs. One general swore he heard his mother calling to him from beneath the waves. She had died 40 years ago, and she was speaking in perfect Earth English. By now everyone knew. The humans hadn't done this. They were the signal. The real thing, the it behind the law, had never been named. Never even fully understood. But now that the seal was broken, it was bleeding out through humanity like light through a cracked lantern. The Cerithian high priests held one last gathering, deep inside the orbiting memory lattice of their ancestral moon. They joined hands and opened the last, most forbidden archive. The code inside was simple, ancient, and terrifying. It read, "We built them to hold it. We begged them to forget." They remembered. Earth was changing too. It was no longer stationary. Astronomers across dozens of sectors confirmed the impossible. Earth had moved. Not through normal propulsion, not through wormholes. It had simply relocated. And it now orbited a dead star that shouldn't exist, in a system that hadn't been mapped in over 1,000,000 years. The planets around it had names like Echo, Null, and Threshold. But no probes could enter the region. They stopped. Mid-space, as if time itself refused to follow. Inside the Sol system, gravity obeyed different rules. Time ran backward for some ships, sideways for others. One vessel reported spending 6 days observing Earth, only to return and find they had aged 60 years. More disturbing, on Earth's surface, changes were visible. New mountain ranges appeared. Forests that weren't there before grew overnight. Buildings shimmered and flickered between architectural styles from different centuries. And people, humans, began acting differently. Not hostile, not violent, just detached, like actors in a play that only they knew the lines to. The footage showed them walking in perfect circles, staring at the sky without blinking, speaking to people who weren't there, and always, smiling. Then the cube opened. Not all at once, not with a bang. It unfolded like a flower, silently, revealing a hollow interior. No circuits, no power, just a single strip of cloth. Child's ribbon, burned at the edges, stained with time. Valor, watching from what remained of the Concorde's emergency observatory, understood instantly. It was memory. The final piece. The moment the galaxy had tried to bury. The cost of forgetting. And then Earth sent one message. It came in every language, on every frequency, burned into every satellite, every transmission, every scrap of digital thought. We asked you not to touch us, because we were holding the door. No threat, no blame, just heartbreak. And then the countdown began. 7 stars, 7 days, 7 screams. Each one would collapse into itself, one by one. Unless what? No one knew. But Valor, staring at the pale blue dot that no longer behaved like a world, whispered the only truth left. We weren't afraid of them. We should have been afraid of what they kept locked away. And now, it was awake. Earth's true nature. Earth had never been just a planet. That illusion was for the young, naive minds in a galaxy desperate for order, for explanations, for rules that made them feel safe. But now that the veil had been lifted, what was left was not a world. It was a mechanism, a lock, a seal, a living monument to a mistake so massive that even the stars had chosen to forget it. The 6th day began with a tremor, not in space but in thought. Billions of alien minds across thousands of systems felt it at once. A single heartbeat, loud and slow, pulsing not from Earth's surface but from its soul. The waveform didn't match any known energy pattern. It wasn't light. It wasn't heat. It wasn't radiation. It was memory. Memory shaped into rhythm, bleeding outward through consciousness like ink in water, and with that beat came visions. Valor watched them from a sealed room, eyes wide, unblinking. The walls had turned translucent, showing scenes from Earth's past. Only it wasn't history as anyone remembered it. It was older, raw, from a time before the sky held stars, from a time when something had emerged, from within the Terran. Biosphere. Not an entity. Not a god. A concept. A metaphysical parasite. A being of thought so vast and old that it bent cause and effect around itself. It didn't destroy. It infected reality itself, rewriting existence to suit its unknowable hunger. The ancient civilizations had tried to fight it. They lost. Then they tried to contain it. They failed. So in one final act of desperation, they created humanity. Not as a species, but as a seal. A perfectly chaotic, beautifully unstable set of minds capable of contradiction, capable of forgetting, capable of burying the unbearable beneath layers of denial, imagination, and story. Humans became the tomb, and Earth the tombstone. The law, never touch a human, was the final prayer, but someone had broken it, and the concept, the infection, the thing behind the door, had stirred. Now, Earth moved through space, not by engines, but by will. The dead star it now orbited, known only as the Hollow Sun, pulsed with gravity signatures from parallel dimensions. Entire fleets tried to approach. They vanished. Not destroyed, simply recontextualized. One ship returned, or at least a version of it did. The hull was covered in children's drawings, stick figures, suns, crude renderings of smiling humans holding hands with monstrous beings made of shadow. No one had drawn them. No one on the ship even remembered being on it. Inside the cargo bay, a phrase had been etched over and over in melted steel. "We forgive you, but it is too late." In the central observatory of the shattered Concorde, the last remaining Cerithian priestess decoded the final ancient archive. Her voice trembled as she spoke, not from fear, but from understanding. "The law was mercy," she said. "We knew what lived inside them, but we believed they could hold it. Now they are remembering, and it remembers them too." She wept, not because they would die, but because they would no longer be real. The galaxy was not ending in fire or war. It was being unwritten, repurposed into something else. One by one, civilizations were being edited out of the universal narrative. Their histories faded, their species forgotten, their homes converted into impossible geometries where logic bent and causality looped. Earth, now surrounded by a fractal halo of time-locked matter, released a single signal across every surviving system. It contained no words, just an image. It showed Reed Talon, older now, standing before an immense door carved into a bleeding sky. He looked tired, gentle, sad. He raised a hand, not in greeting, but in farewell. Behind him, the door pulsed. It was open, and from within, the shape emerged. Not large, not loud. Just a child, a human child. Eyes wide, skin pale, humming a lullaby that didn't belong to any culture. It walked into the new universe empty, clean, waiting, and smiled, and reality bent to make room. Valor stared into the feed. He no longer recognized the stars, or his ship, or his own reflection. His body had become light. His thoughts became stories that didn't belong to him. And still he remembered one thing: the touch. That single moment when his hand met Reed Talon's shoulder. That was the crack. That was the sin. He had reached across a line the galaxy was, never meant to cross, and what had been waiting had simply waited long enough. The final silence. There was no war, no final battle, no rebellion, no screams, just the falling away of everything. One moment, the galaxy teemed with the breath of trillions, stars burning bright, cities dancing through space, languages colliding, like fireworks and empires bickering over the future. And then it began to peel back, not explode, not vanish, but peel, like a painting left too long in the rain. First, the colors ran, then the shapes, then the idea of the thing itself. Planets became whispers. Moons became pauses and forgotten songs. Even time lost direction. Memories replayed out of order. Dreams replaced real days. And entire species found themselves born, extinct, and reborn again, all in the same heartbeat. At the center of this, unraveling stood Earth, still blue, still green, still beautiful, but no longer a planet. It now floated on memory, orbiting nothing, existing between seconds. And at its core stood a child. She had no name, no records, no past. But all who saw her agreed on one thing: she was smiling. And as she smiled, the stars watched themselves become stories. The Varkari archives, once the largest databanks in the galaxy, found their records turned to parables. Their factual logs now read like bedtime tales. Their wars became fables. Their rulers became legends. Their entire existence condensed into a single word: before. The Cerithians, masters of memory, dissolved in their own thoughts. They did not die. They became context, reabsorbed into the narrative the humans had unknowingly held back for so long. Their songs now echoed not in sound but in the shape of nebulae and the flicker of dying light. As for the Kirex, proud and logical, their final act was not resistance, but apology. They sent a last message into the void, aimed at Earth. It read, "We did not know what you carried. Forgive us for unsealing your burden." There was no reply. There didn't need to be. Because the humans were no longer messengers. They were now the medium. Reed Talon stood alone on a plateau above what was once the Atlantic Ocean. The water was gone, replaced by shifting clouds of memory, glowing particles shaped like faces, buildings, forgotten laughter. He no longer looked human. Not exactly. His form was fluid, more idea than flesh. Yet his eyes still held weight. The kind of weight that carried galaxies inside them. He looked to the horizon, where the stars once burned. They were going out, one by one. Not extinguished, just resolved. As if the universe had finished its thought. Valor watched this from the last place that could still be called a place. A fragment of space, frozen in metatime, kept alive by sheer memory. His body was gone long ago, but his awareness lingered, held in place by the consequences of a single action. His touch. That contact, simple, accidental, born of pride and frustration, had triggered the unraveling. Not because humans were gods, but because humans had been made to hold one, not a being, a law, a natural constant so dangerous, so volatile, that it had to be contained inside the minds of a species too messy, too emotional, too fragile to ever be fully understood. The law had worked, for a time, but all cages break. Valor no longer wept. There were no tears in conceptual space. He simply observed as all that had once been known transformed into myth, and then into legend, and then into silence. And at the end of all silence, one voice spoke. It was a child's voice. Soft, clear, speaking in the purest form of language. Not words, not thought, but feeling. "You were kind once," she said, "to no one. Before fear, before forgetting, you asked us to help. So we did." Then she sat down in the middle of the void and began to draw. Lines of stardust, curves of light, new shapes, new possibilities. She wasn't rebuilding the galaxy. She was rewriting it. And in her hands, the memory of what had been, of what had touched a human and paid the price, was folded into a single final sentence. A truth whispered into the bones of the new universe. This time, we will remember.